But I actually want to go ahead and focus in on the topic now of comic books. And I want to talk about
Sure.
representation in comic books. Because you created Luiza for a reason. You wanted
Yeah.
her to look that way and to have that background because you understood that it was important for her story.
For
Prior to
sure.
her comic, her personality, her these adventures and this universe of stories did not exist. And oftentimes artists they create new stories and worlds because those stories didn't exist before in their childhood, or now they want to be able to create that opportunity for that next generation. So when it comes to A Reason to Smile, your series, how do the comic books that you grew up with and the media and the stuff that you grew up with, how does that bleed into the influence of A Reason to Smile and Louisa?
So I wasn't brought up in a political household or even a household that was very much about culture. It was just about, surviving day to day. You got to do X, Y, and Z to be successful. This is where we're going to go. This is the direction that we're going to be in. So I said, okay, you live your life that way and you don't really see those experiences and understand what those mean when they present themselves. And then one of my best friends, who I call my brother, he got really into like the politics and the issues that Puerto Rican people deal with from the island in the diaspora. And he put me on to my culture. He helped me to really understand what it was to, you know, live on the island in Puerto Rico, to live here, what he had to go through, what others go through, and it started opening my eyes to seeing a life that I wasn't living myself, but was surrounded by and wasn't really aware of it. So as I continued to, be an artist, different jobs took me different directions, and I ended up as a art teacher in an after school program that then took me into being a teacher assistant in a charter school.
Hmm.
So that was a really great experience because then I got to see all these different kids, different backgrounds, different experiences, all learning the same things. Um, but what I realized at one point, I remember I was in a classroom and I was looking around because I had just saw a book about a specific culture that was underrepresented as well,
Mm-hmm.
but was kind of newer to America. And I'm thinking, I'm Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans have been in New York for a long time. I don't see one book about us. How are we one of the oldest groups of quote unquote immigrants, even though we're citizens, we're still basically immigrants. Um, how are we in this country for so long and we don't have a plethora of books about us? That's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had these feelings before, but it wasn't in a school setting. It's very different when it's the foundation of your life that doesn't represent what your life should be. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've never read a book about Puerto Ricans in your school.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
You know what I'm saying? I haven't. Audience, have you? No, I don't think so. And if you have, you're fortunate. But as a Puerto Rican, as a New Yorker, there should be a bunch of stories about us that help to show you what New York is like, what um, the makeup of New York City is like. There should be a bunch of books about Jewish people. There should be a bunch of people about Puerto Ricans, a bunch of people about Chinese books about Chinese people, a bunch of books about Africans and African Americans, because it's not just African Americans that were here. African immigrants came over too. The
Mm-hmm.
Bronx is full of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So there should be books about all the immigrants that have come to this city, especially, and then, of course, the rest of the country. So these kids can learn this is normal. This is everyday life. It's not just this one little pocket of what is on TV or whatever that is your world. That hurt me as a kid. I grew up thinking that life was one way, and I grew up ignorant. I grew up not understanding my neighbors or my people. It's not cool. So when I realized that, I said, okay, well, I want to make comics. I want to draw Spider-Man and X-Men and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also slower than the average artist that does those things. So how am I going to build myself up to be at that level? Make my own books. And if I make my own books, I can start building my portfolio. I can start building my skill set. But do I want to do the stories that have already been done?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else does those stories. What is going to set me apart? What is going to set my story apart? You know what? Let's not even worry about that. Let's just do a story that we need. Fill that space that we don't have filled. And let's talk about Puerto Rican people, because West Side Story is the only one that if you could think about a Puerto Rican person, you're probably going to think about West Side Story. And what do you think about West Side Story? Gangs and Romeo and Juliet, and the families don't want each other together, and negative things. I want to bring something positive. When I deal with things, I want to smile. I want to be happy. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to deal with all this frustration because it's going to be there every day. So what do? I want to smile. I look at the silver lining in everything. And then it popped. A reason to smile. That's it. That's what you need to write your book about, a reason to smile. What's going to be your reason to smile every day? And then I thought about the fact that the kids that I was teaching, they don't have a lot of books about girls. Boom, make a book about a girl. I'm not a girl. I grew up with my sister. I grew up with my mother. I knew girls. I could try, right? That's the thing that we need to do more than anything else. We just need to try. Even if we don't succeed, we need to try. That's what's important to me. And then, of course, I wanted her to be Puerto Rican because there's no stories about Puerto Ricans. But in her being Puerto Rican, I wanted to showcase the positive elements of my people, of my family, of my friends, of the people that I know from the island. You know, what is the thing that people say about us in the positive realm? What is it that we say about ourselves in the positive realm? And I wanted to focus on finding the bright side out of everything. So that's where Luiza came to be.
Wow. Wow, and I love that you are approaching the topic of representation from that positive lens, because I know that within the space of artists who are trying to talk about social and political issues, there does tend to sometimes be a default to like, okay, well, we have these stories that come from struggle or immigration or pain, and therefore our stories have to be defined by that, by that trauma, by those harsh experiences. And I think that's very valid, and we definitely need those stories, but that doesn't have to be the limitation of the stories that we have. And it certainly isn't healthy to only have those types of stories, and we need to be able to have, like you said, a reason to smile.